The following program is a podcast1.com production.
Your healthy radio addiction starts now.
Power to the people!
The Laura Ingraham Show.
Welcome to the 75th Annual Golden Globes and Happy New Year, Hollywood. It's 2018, marijuana is finally allowed and sexual harassment finally isn't. It's going to be a good year.
I have to say, never have I been happier to have my stupid television system in my house not working. Someone convinced me to have this central TV system where it's just one remote that you use for all the TVs, and it controls music, TV, the lighting for your house. It was obscenely expensive, and it literally never works. I should never have gotten it. I was so upset because I couldn't watch the football yesterday afternoon. I had a big wedding this weekend I went to. My producer, longtime, she was an intern on the Laura Ingraham Show, has helped us on the Laura Ingraham Show, and also works at Fox. Elisa Cipollone got married over the weekend to a wonderful young man. It was a wedding for the ages. Oh my gosh, the wedding started Saturday and it went till yesterday at about 9 o'clock. So it was a long one. In the afternoon we all came home to my house and it didn't work. But then I was delighted because I started getting texts from Raymond, who's with us, and I started reading what was being said at the Golden Globes, and including that Seth Meyers, who I guess was the host. Oh my gosh, I am so glad I missed the Golden Globes. How many of you watched this travesty last night? 855-40-LAURA. I think Pat Buchanan is going to join us soon. Never watched it. I bet he's never watched it one time in his life. Roger Simon's going to stop by. We're going to talk to him. Matt Zaintz is going to join us, local sports reporter in Alabama. The big game tonight. I'm supposedly going, although my flight's already delayed. So let's see if I get in. Apparently, I couldn't hitch a ride. I tried to hitch a ride. Is that bad to try to hitch a ride on Air Force One? I'm just being honest. I mean, they were going anyway. I mean, they have room. I'd go with the luggages or something. Just give me a blanket. Wouldn't I survive in the luggage hold? I don't know. Anyway, never heard back. I sent out smoke signals to see if I could get a ride down there. No luck whatsoever. Raymond Arroyo is with us. Raymond, we're going to play the Hail to the Chief music as Oprah steps up to speak.
Yes, you missed the big presidential rollout last night.
Oh, no.
This is not a good, and I cannot believe you missed the Saints game. Cannot believe you missed that game.
I couldn't watch it. Raymond, this TV system, okay, This company, I mean, I'm not going to mention the name of the company, at least not yet. But this company
I'll give you a half hour.
Oh, no. Give me a half hour. No kidding. This company that put in – first of all, when anyone tells you it's a smart system, oh, you have a smart TV. You have a smart electrical system. You have a smart audio system. You will be the dumbest person ever if you – agree to any of these, my mother used to say, Raymond, highfalutin things. My mother used to say, oh, you're so highfalutin now. When's the last time that was used on the Laura Ingraham Show, that phrase? But it's a nightmare. So it doesn't work, and I was glad, but I missed the game. What happened with the Saints game? They won, right?
Oh, they won, but boy, it was a squeaker, but they pulled it out. They had the Panthers gotten one touchdown, and they had like 4 minutes left in the game. They would have beaten the Saints, but thank goodness, the Houdat Nation is rejoicing. Yes, I was. I was in evidence yesterday.
Awesome. So Raymond, let's get back to the Golden Globes. Okay, I think James has part of Oprah, and there's been some murmurs of Oprah for president for years. It's been years and years and years that we've heard Oprah for president.
Correct.
And I always say Nopra. but Oprah for president, and Oprah's a savior. Oprah's going to do it for us. Oprah's the new Obama. Well, I will say this. She knows how to speak to people. She has an uncanny ability to connect with everyday Americans, even as she's a multi-billionaire. She's really good.
She does.
She has stage presence. She's self-deprecating. I was watching the Entertainment Tonight. They had because my internet works, so I was able to watch her in the makeup chair, Raymond. Gosh, I don't want anyone to see me in the makeup chair. I don't even want to see me. And I try to block the mirror view of my own face in the makeup chair, but she's like completely doesn't care. She's in the makeup chair. She's like, I'm trying to get my hair to work tonight, but it could be way too frizzy for TV. She's going on and on. It was really funny, but she does that. She's very self-deprecating, and I've always liked her. I've always liked Oprah. Last night, it was a big cover-up for Hollywood. I'm sorry, but this was one big shift the narrative from Hollywood to, frankly, politics, even though she said it was beyond politics. Did you have any doubt about that, Raymond, that was really what was going on last night?
No. Look, they nominated certain films, certain actors to take the emphasis away from the sexual harassment that has run rampant in Hollywood for decades, and they focused on equality, racial equality, and stamping out sexual harassment in the workplaces across the United States. Now, these people haven't even visited most of the United States, but they're going to stamp out workplace sexual harassment.
Oh, no, she went on about the farm workers, Raymond, and the hospitality workers. I'm like, oh, please.
Well, that thing is Meryl Streep, who, of course, remember last week we were saying she was silent on this thing, and actresses in Hollywood were charging her with silence on the Harvey Weinstein situation. She showed up with some woman who was representing the farm workers union. They all had like proxy activists with them as their number twos. It was unbelievable. It was an unbelievable thing. More all right, political rally.
Let's listen to the part of Oprah's speech where she was really building to the crescendo.
So I want tonight to express gratitude to all the women who have endured years of abuse and assault because they, like my mother, had children to feed and bills to pay and dreams to pursue. They're the women whose names we'll never know. They are domestic workers
who work for Oprah.
And farm workers. I'm joking. They are working in factories, and they work in restaurants, and they're in academia and engineering and medicine and science. They're part of the world of tech and politics and business. There are athletes in the Olympics, and there are soldiers in the military, and there's someone else.
Someone else? Who's someone else? We dropped it there, James. And there's someone else.
Cliffhanger.
Yeah, the cliffhanger, James. What's the edit on that? There's someone else. Who is that someone else? I fell asleep at that point. I'm sorry, but I want our listeners' reaction to this. But this was one obvious attempt to shift the spotlight away from Kevin Spacey and the pedophiles in Hollywood who've been abusing small boys, not just women. Do you notice? I noticed this, Raymond, and everybody listening right now. How many of you heard her speak for men who've been abused? Did she even mention men? I listened to that entire speech on YouTube. Unless I'm missing something, I did not hear her mention men or boys who've been abused by some of the biggest names in Hollywood in the entertainment industry, by homosexual directors and casting agents who have abused boys. And I think that when that story blows up, we're really gonna hear about it, or not. I don't know, or is it just women who count? It was so obvious to me that this was a beautiful speech in a way it was conceived and written and presented. I will give her that. It had that feel of a off the top of her head thing, but she had it in prompter. But she freelanced some of it. She had obviously gone through it a lot, but she's a really good actress. She made it seem like it was a kind of just heartfelt conversation, but it was carefully crafted. And if I didn't know better, I'd say it was poll tested. So was it a campaign rollout? I don't know. I have my doubts. I think Oprah's going to run for president, Raymond, after watching that?
Well, I will tell you this. The moment after it happened, the moment after the speech concluded, all the Hollywood types were saying, I'm writing the Oprah 2020, tweet storm. And NBC News sent out a thing that congratulated our new president. That's what NBC News sent out. And they had a picture of Oprah attached in her speech. So clearly, I think there are a lot of people who would like to see Oprah run. But, I think they overplay their hand here. And as you said, this was clearly an attempt. They had to give Oprah this award because, A, she's a very high-profile woman, very high-profile minority woman. And this is clearly what Hollywood feels uncomfortable with these days, that they're fully integrated and that there is enough attention being given to women. So we give Oprah the Cecil B. DeMille Award, which is, Oprah's done a lot, but most of her contribution has been in television.
Cecil B. DeMille.
She's done a few films, but
it's been a long time since The Color Purple, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Honestly.
Beloved and The Color Purple. She did a walk-on on that President movie a few years ago.
How many?
Come on.
You know what I was thinking? How many people who were sitting there in that fancy audience had sexually harassed people?
Right.
I bet a lot sitting there, right? And when she said, when she started off by saying, or Seth Meyers started off by saying, now sexual harassment, you can smoke pot, but sexual harassment is not allowed. Well, it's never been allowed, and not in the modern day. It's been prohibited conduct as a civil matter, and in some cases, if it rises to the level of assault, it's a criminal matter. So Seth Meyers, right off the bat, states something that's a misstatement. It's factually inaccurate. It might not have been something that all men abided by in the workplace, and especially in that pit of Hollywood. But it's always been prohibited, and not always, but in the last 30 years, it's been prohibited conduct. So, forgive me if I'm not wowed by your sudden understanding of a certain way of comporting yourself in the workplace. But let's hear a little bit more from the Democrats' future nominee, and then we'll close out this segment. We have a lot more to get to. Buchanan's on tap. We have a great Ingram angle tonight. Jesse Waters is going to be hosting because I'm going to be at the Alabama game. Sorry, but it's once a year. I got to go. And a lot more. We have great guests. Roger Simon's going to stop by to hit these frauds at the Golden Globes, and a lot more. Stay with us.
In my career, what I've always tried my best to do, whether on television or through film, is to say something about how men and women really behave, to say how we experience shame, how we love and how we rage, how we fail, how we retreat, persevere, and how we overcome. I've interviewed and portrayed people who withstood some of the ugliest things life can throw at you, but the one quality all of them seem to share is an ability to maintain hope for a brighter morning, even during our darkest nights.
Thanks to my wonderful sponsors and your support, I'm glad to say that we can provide this podcast at no cost to you at all. As a loyal listener of my program, please consider testing our sponsors because they're the ones who actually cover the cost to produce this daily show. So if you're a dog lover like I am, how about giving your dog, your best friend, a fresh, healthy, and nutritious diet? When dogs eat well, they live longer and happier lives. I'm here to tell you about NomNomNow.com, which cooks the world's best dog food. It's made fresh in the USA and delivered right to your door every week. Nom Nom Now's customized recipes cook fresh in our kitchen, delivering healthy nutrition you can actually see. Switch to Nom Nom Now and your dog will have more energy, a shinier, softer coat, and a longer, better life. Nom Nom Now really is the best food for your best friend. And right now you can save 50% on your first 2 orders of fresh, healthy dog food when you use my code Laura at NomNomNow.com. That's code Laura and save 50% on your first 2 orders. NomNom now.com. and code word LAURA.
I want all the girls watching here and now to know that a new day is on the horizon. And when that new day finally dawns, it will be because of a lot of magnificent women, many of whom are right here in this room tonight, and some pretty phenomenal men fighting hard to make sure that they become the leaders who take us to the time when nobody ever has to say, "Me too," again. Thank you.
No, she said there are a few phenomenal men and there are some phenomenal men. We have on the line now Rob in Texas. And we have, yeah, Al. Actually, go to Al in California first. Rob will get to you in a moment because Rob's calling in about football. Al, go ahead.
Yeah, I've been a musician for 35 years, and ironically, the only two personal encounters I've had of sexual abuse coming out of Hollywood were of men that I've worked with, and from top name, producers. And it's sort of like if they didn't follow through with the producer, the deal was done. You're out of here. And one time a friend of mine had to call me. He had put furniture and everything in front of his door until he could get out of this guy's house the next morning, And so, anyway, just wanted to pass that on.
So was it your personal experience or friends of yours in the music industry?
My personal friends that I've worked with as musicians. And let me tell you, years later, when we would talk about this, everybody I knew down in Hollywood knew about it. My managers and stuff said, "Oh yeah, we knew about that guy. Everybody knows about that guy." So they all know about it.
So what did you think of Oprah shaming men and shaming across the country men who do this? Look, I've said this for so many years. I don't like bullies of any sort, and obviously conduct which puts people in abusive positions cannot be tolerated, period. And whatever you call it, Me Too or whatever, I don't care what you call it. It's never been tolerated. And it shouldn't be tolerated, but Hollywood's looked a blind eye for probably the whole history of Hollywood. That's just the way it goes. But what were your general thoughts? Was this more political for Oprah, or was this a newfound concern for abuse victims?
Well, I really just don't even watch it. I mean, I had my own blackout on these awards shows a while ago because it's fake. It's way too late, and Hollywood is the exact industry that perpetuates all this behavior. So it just absolutely means nothing to me when they come out with this little black dress thing. I mean, it just means absolutely nothing. You
know what I was waiting for, Al? I was waiting for the person who showed up in a bright pink dress, a red dress, just to make a statement. How about what happened to women being individuals, where they think for themselves? Now they're told you all have to dress the same. Isn't that very controlling? I would argue that there's a controlling, domineering political cloak being wrapped around women in the entertainment industry. Imagine the woman who decided not to wear black because she just didn't want to wear black. See, that would have been a real statement, in my view. No, I'm not wearing black. I'm not dancing to your tune. I don't buy what you're selling. I've always stood against this abuse and this type of abuse, and I'm not going to turn it into a political moment now. Oh my gosh, that would have been awesome. But who has the guts to do that? Pat Buchanan up next. Al, thanks for that call. We'll take all your calls on this. 855-40-LAW. I'm heading to the Alabama game, but not before Buchanan.
Probably, if I left out anything, it's probably stuff that was even more damning. It's that bad. It's that bad. I mean, it's an extraordinary moment in time, and the last several days focused on my book, I think, are proof of this. This is what happened here? What's going on here? This is, I think not an exaggeration and not unreasonable. It's not unreasonable to say this is 25th Amendment kind of stuff.
Michael Wolff, whose book has, obviously taken off in part because of the White House's reaction, over the top, Bannon's comments, which he's kind of since regretted in a statement to Axios, all distracting in my mind from the great accomplishments thus far of this administration and, of course, the great challenges that lie ahead. No better analyst out there than my friend of, 35 years, Pat Buchanan, conservative author, commentator, worked for so many presidents with a great perspective. We just adore him. Happy New Year, Pat. Great to talk to you.
Happy New Year to you, Laura. How's it going?
It's going very well. I'm excited because my team, Alabama, Dartmouth grads are usually Alabama fans, Pat.
I'm usually an Alabama fan, but I got a nephew that went to Georgia, and he's down there with my brother in Atlanta. They went out to the Rose Bowl also to see Georgia take on Oklahoma.
Oh, my gosh.
They're all down there in Atlanta.
Oh, well, maybe I'll see them. So it's going to be a lot of fun. By the way, the McLaughlin group came back this weekend, I understand. I missed it because I have no TVs in my house. None of them were working.
It got together. Eleanor was there. Tom Rogan is doing the chair, and Clarence Page was there, and Evan was there from National Review. So it was a good show. It was starting off, and it felt comfortable. So enjoyed it.
Nice. I love it. Fantastic. I used to go on that in the old days, Pat. Remember that in the old days?
Sure. I think they had the fourth chair. You were right across from Eleanor, as I recall.
Yeah,
right?
She loved me. It was a very close relationship.
She and I get along after 35 years or so.
Yeah, I think she was like, who's this upstart sitting across from me? I don't think I'm going to deal with that. Pat, let's talk about this Wolff book, but then we'll move on to the substance. Very interesting developments on the issue I know you care about as much as I do, which is trade. And I do not want to miss that conversation with you. But let's first talk about Wolff. He was given access to the White House, which I think was crazy. If anything's crazy coming out of the White House, which I frankly think they've done a great job, but that takes the cake. Your reaction to what, if any, lasting damage this does to the Trump team?
Well, first, I agree with you. It's inexplicable that Michael Wolff, given his reputation and orientation, was given the ability to roam around the West Wing and talk to whomever he wished and get these kinds of quotes and statements. But on the book itself, there's a great deal of redundancy with what journalists have been writing about Trump and saying about Trump and claiming that insiders say. So I think with the general public, I think we're very transfixed by it, those who are involved in this community, really the talk-filled room around town, if you will. But I don't know that the country sees anything different, and I don't know that the numbers are going to change. And so I think people are going to move on. And they're going to move on sooner rather than later because, well, this is sort of a shocking material in a book about any White House. For this White House, it's been taking these kinds of hits almost every day.
Well, the idea, which I've been on this track of watching the left in its ultimate desperation. First, they said that Trump would never win. He's a racist, anti-immigrant, xenophobe, dumb, is stupid, doesn't know how to speak, can't debate, doesn't have the money to put into ads, all that. They said he was going to lose. He didn't lose. Then he wins, and it became instantly he's out of touch with reality, to he's developing dementia, to he's unstable, to he's has a mental disorder. That's where we are right now. That's how desperate the left is. And now they're trotting out Oprah as a potential savior in all of this, Pat. So we've gone from he's a racist xenophobe to Oprah. That's where they are now.
Right. Well, I will say when Trump won, the establishment and the local elites were really knocked back on their heels. None of them predicted it. They had predicted he would get beat in the primaries and that he would get wiped out in the general election. Then they predicted the economy would go completely into the dumpster, the markets would tank, and so none of this came to pass. So they became aware of their own, lack of contact, if you will, with Middle America. And then you have had a lot of good things happen this year, and a lot of things done in traditional Republican terms on judges, Supreme Court judges, and deregulation, and now the tax cut passes. And so really there's an incapacity to understand, the fact that on substance the Trump administration is doing fine, but they just cannot deal with the reality of Donald Trump as he behaves every day, the daily tweeter and all of that, and so the latest, you're right, the latest is that he's losing it, he's deranged, he's demented, and we have to move to the 25th Amendment. But there's no follow on this. And so it's just all talk.
What about the way that Reagan was treated, Pat? I remember when I was there at the White House in '87, and I came to Washington, and that was the scuttlebutt then about Reagan. And I'm not saying Trump is Reagan. He's not. No one's Reagan. But I'm just saying that the elite's desperate desire to diminish him, minimize his accomplishments, distract Republicans was there then. Craig Shirley and others have reminded us of this. And your thoughts there?
Well, I think you're right about Reagan. Reagan did not enter the pantheon as a great president until after he left office, and people began to realize, wait a minute, he did what he said he would come to do. We won the Cold War here. We had the greatest economy we've had in a long time. The malaise of 1979, 1980 is over. America's respected all over the world. And this man led us through the decade, and maybe he was right about some things, and maybe what he did had something to do with it. So I think the admission, the concession that Ronald Reagan may have been really a truly great president did not come until after he departed from office, and I think that's often true. I mean, you're right. I mean, I can remember just Donaldson yelling at him in the Rose Garden when I was communications director, and all the rest of it, and people talking about he's losing it, it's not there, and all the rest. I mean, Reagan was Reagan, and all the way through, and it had the media could not understand it or grasp it or accept it in the White House. And you're right, they talk the same way they talk now about Trump. But you look at how things are going, and they seem to contradict the media message.
Well, I did an angle on this last week, a monologue on the truly dumb things that the so-called smart people have wrought upon America, whether wars that killed thousands and thousands of Americans that ended up just further destabilizing the Middle East, or open borders that have flooded our country with indigent people, sometimes criminals, or in the case of trade, deals that have ended up offshoring manufacturing, Pat, and created this massive trade deficit for America, which brings me to this.
If you take a look at the elite media, they cheered NAFTA and GATT and all the rest. They talked about open borders. Look at the Wall Street Journal, Bob Bartley,
nightmare.
The great. He said there should be a campaign for a constitutional amendment. There shall be open borders. I mean, and this is the voice of conservatism. And then you marched us into Iraq and Afghanistan and Libya and Syria and Yemen and all of these things that have just bled us completely, and your trade deals. People wonder why, good heavens, why are the Chinese so powerful? Why are their cities so gleaming? And you say, well, perhaps $4 trillion in U.S. trade deficits with China since Bush won might have had something to do with it.
No, they have a lot of cash. A lot of cash.
Well, sure. I think that historically, people are going to look back and say that while Ronald Reagan led America to victory in the Cold War, and George H.W. Bush was a great closer in that, I will say that following that, the Americans blew it. That the Americans had the world in the palm of their hand, and look what they did with it. Look at where we are now compared to where we are then, and why do they think the American people rose up and said, we do not want Hillary Clinton or not any more of you people, any more of you Republicans, that crowd, and we don't want, and they went for Bernie and Cruz and Trump.
And I have to, Pat, remind everyone who are listening right now across the country that while the president has been buoyed by Republican support in especially the last 2 months, now that they needed that tax reform to pass, and they're defending him against the charges in that Wolff book. So people, in an odd way, Republicans are rallying closer together post-Wolff book. I would say it could turn out to actually be a really good thing for the president. I will say, however, in a big however, this week we're learning, Pat, that the president is receiving huge blowback for his position on trade. The Business Roundtable, the Chamber of Commerce, the old-time Republicans are pushing him, and they did this past weekend at Camp David, on his planned trade penalties against China for what they've done in stealing our intellectual property and their violation of anti-dumping ordinances on everything from solar panels to steel. And they're pushing him behind closed doors against acting against cheaters in trade like China. And the Politico has a big piece on this today, and I am very concerned that there will be any retreat on the trade agenda by Bob Lighthizer, who I know does not want to retreat, or Wilbur Ross, or the president himself. They have to go full speed ahead on their trade.
Well, here's where you run into, the economic power in the Republican Party is corporate America, big business, transnational corporations, and there's an enormous amount of money to go in there. And the problem that happened in this country back around the 1970s is the vital interest of transnational American corporations began to diverge from the national interest of the United States. If by the latter you meant the wages of American workers, the stability of American society, our preeminence in the world, constant trade surpluses for the United States, which add to GDP. And so the transnational corporations became in their interest, to put it simply, to move production overseas, Mexico, Asia, elsewhere, move it out of the United States, out of these towns, cities here, move it over there, bring the goods back, sell them at Walmart for the same price, pocket the difference and make huge profits, and have the shareholders consume a lot more of the wealth. And their interests are directly clash with those of the constituency which was indispensable to electing Donald Trump. So I'll have to read that article, but you knew that was coming.
Yep.
These guys, these transnational corporations are very vital institutions, but they have no morality whatsoever, no deep patriotism whatsoever, in my judgment, as institutions. Even Milton Friedman said, your job is to make profits however you can. And that's not my view as a traditionalist American.
No, and we see that some Republican lawmakers cautioned against going too far on trade, raising concerns about...
Do we want to get rid of the trade deficits or not? We're going to have... China's trade deficit is going to be larger this year than it was in 2016.
$370 billion, Pat. $370 billion. Last year it was $360.
That's enormous in terms of goods.
It's a joke. It's a complete joke.
That's the GDP of entire countries.
Yeah, well, but we're focused on Putin, whose economy is smaller than France's. Putin's the big problem. Oh, okay. Pat Buchanan, love having you on. Thank you so much for your perspective on this, as always. The original voice, really, other than Goldwater and Reagan, the original voice for conservative populism, nationalism was Pat Buchanan. Taught me pretty much everything I know in politics. Pat, I'll give you a Go Dogs cheer, but I'm for Bama all the way. We'll take a break. Don't go away. Stay with us. Let's go to Rebecca in North Carolina, talking about the dresses at the Golden Globes. I guess they were all black because now women are supposedly just supposed to do whatever Meryl Streep says or Time's Up says. They can't think for themselves. Rebecca.
Yes, I completely agree, and to me it didn't matter that they were all black because most of them were so immodest. No self-respect. The dresses were just plunging necklines and
plunging to the floor. That trend of the two, nipples being affixed to the dress by what? They must use that double-sided tape or something just to hold them together. Hold them apart, because that defies the law of gravity for the most part. I just think most of these women are really attractive and beautiful. They don't have to do that. I don't know why they think they have to do that, and they wonder why everyone thinks Hollywood's hypersexualized, and they objectify you.
Your healthy radio addiction starts now.
Power to the people!
The Laura Ingraham Show.
He is their father, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Not only is he their father, he's their boss.
Right.
I mean, their whole lives are attached to him. But these are the people who have to deal with him every day. And these are the people who, and on the top of everything else, he was not a very good father. He was absent, remote, having God knows who he was involved with at any particular moment in time.
Look, the truth is he's a nasty guy.
Michael Wolff now reaching a new low and criticizing Trump's performance as a parent. You are listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. I take this all as a sign of great positive momentum for the president's agenda. Now, why do I say that? This is the author of that book, Fire and Fury, who has been all over the place. His book was released supposedly early. It was a big PR coup for them when the White House decided to spend so much of its oxygen on the book. However, probably not messaging as well as they could have in the aftermath of the book's release. But I'm very optimistic in watching this play out. Everything from Michael Wolff's lame reporting. By the way, his page on me, he has 3 references to me. The one that was substantive is completely and 100% false. Go to my Twitter feed, sign up, and you'll see why. References Roger Ailes' funeral and Rush Limbaugh and myself. And I don't even understand the passage, but it's completely fabricated. So just look at my Twitter feed and you'll see what I mean. So the man is just a complete, he's a complete farce as a writer. He had an agenda, and he made his reporting conform to that agenda. So everything he saw was through the lens of Trump is a destructive force, Trump is an idiot, Trump doesn't know what he's doing, and we got to get Trump out of office. That was his goal. That was his whole agenda. And so that's how he reported it. And so now what he's doing is, well, Trump was a terrible father. Well, like many fathers who have very busy careers, Donald Trump spent a lot of time at work. But what he did when he spent a lot of time at work, because I've had long conversations with Trump children about this, because I'm always curious, how were you guys raised to be they're so humble for who they are and what they've achieved, and they're so well-mannered and respectful to everyone, not just people who are wealthy, but they're very, and I say this, and I don't agree with all of them on everything, as you all know, but just as people, it's impressive who they've become. None of them drink. None of them ever smoked. And they have great relationships with both their mother, Ivana Trump, and their father. They have great relationships with both. Now, how is that? And they all told me, my mother spent a lot of the time raising us, making sure we had the proper schooling and so forth. But my father taught us the value of work, how to do things with our hands, how to manage from small projects, when we learn how to rewire a lamp, to put a floor down, to cutting trees down for a job in the summer, to building with our hands. We learned every aspect of my father's business by being on site with him, and then by being given greater and greater responsibilities. Now, is that a bad father? I mean, I can tell you from my own experience with my own father, in seeing how they turned out, and I love my father, but he was a real absentee father, and had a drinking problem, and all. Donald Trump did an enormous amount for his kids. And I'm just not in the business of judging other people's parenting abilities, because I feel like I'm stumbling along myself every day. Like, I just do the best I can. But I think unless someone is beating their child, how dare you question other people's parenting because what you've gotten hearsay comments from people about them? I just find that to be such it's a revelation, another revelation about Michael Wolff. But it ultimately undercuts any credibility that he had. And I can't wait to hear more from the Trump kids about that particular concern. And even, I know Ivana in her book talked about how she raised the kids. Well, yeah, because he like most men who are these big, powerful men, they're at work a lot. That is what they do. And they come home and, like a lot of them are exhausted in that era especially, and they're exhausted and they come home and they do what they can. Is he perfect? No, he's not perfect. But he's a terrible father, as Michael Wolff said? Absolutely not. And if he was a terrible father who didn't love his children, I can tell you this, they would not have turned out the way they did. And I've now had a chance to get to know all three. I don't know Tiffany. I only met her once, but I know all three of them, and they're all great people, just as human beings. Again, this is outside of politics. You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. I also was thinking about this. If Trump is really mentally deranged, as now they're trying to make this, he's mentally deranged. He repeats himself. Oh, like none of them do? I've seen their speeches. They give the same lines over and over again. But if Trump is really demented, what does this say about the Democrats who've been unable to stop him? Or the Republicans who ran against him? They must be really stupid if they can't beat a guy with dementia. I mean, honestly. I hear that and I just howl. Trump is stupid. Trump's dementia. Trump is unstable. Trump doesn't know what he's doing. Okay, he beat all of you. He debated Hillary 3 times. He did all these interviews with ABC and CBS and all these people. And somehow they weren't able to do their own mental jujitsu to defeat him. So what does that say about him? Okay, if this is stupid, an economy that's such a high-flying economy, if this is stupid, what we're doing to reorient our trading relationships with China and Korea and South America, if this is stupid, I'll take stupid all day long.
The idea that the President of the United States is seen as a child who can either be used or manipulated by those who have agendas or who is completely incompetent and incapable of doing his job is actually frightening because it's exactly what we heard during the campaign. And if this book is to be believed, and I think it is credible, then it is actually quite frightening for the American people.
Joy Reid. It's actually quite frightening for the American people. You know what's really frightening? That people who have the privilege of speaking on television through a camera and a microphone think we're that stupid. That's what's frightening, that you actually think the American people are this stupid that we're going to listen to your pablum, your predictable pablum of how frightened you are, how scared you are. Was Donald Trump have deportation forces all across the United States, rounding people up, throwing them out of the country who are your maid or nanny? Is he doing that? No. Is Donald Trump deciding that women shouldn't have the right to vote anymore and they should be blocked from voting because he's anti-women and major scandals coming out of the White House? No, there aren't. Is Donald Trump pulling out of international organizations and retreating into his corner and bringing America into this isolationist state? No, he is not. No, none of that's happened. So all the things that they predicted, global economic collapse, none of that happened. But a great economy happened, great judges happened. I certainly hope they continue to renegotiate NAFTA and drop the hammer on China. We've had massive deregulation, which has helped small businesses, including women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses. We have record low African-American unemployment. He's made mistakes and had missteps. Yes, he has. Right at the beginning with the ridiculous comments about crowd size, up into the handling of the Charlottesville, protest with some of the neo-Nazis and the statue people. That was not handled well. However, all in all, this has been a stunning 12 months. He hasn't been in office yet for a year. He will be on the 20th. but already a stunning series of accomplishments for this president, despite the fact that every day of the week, every minute of every day, he is under assault. You're listening to your Healthy Radio Addiction, 855-40-LAURA. We'll take a break. We have a lot more to get to. Raymond Arroyo is going to step in. I'll be back in a few minutes. I have a big announcement on immigration that a warning, I should say, on the immigration debate. You're not going to want to miss that. And Stephen Miller versus Jake Tapper. More on the Golden Globes fiasco where women are told they have to all dress the same or they're not real women. So that's a turnaround. I thought, remember they were all upset if men were telling women they had to wear skirts and they couldn't wear pants. Now women are dictating to other women what they should wear. How's that feminist? 3 women at the Golden Globes didn't wear black. 3. Count them. One, I'm telling you, one should have worn maybe a rainbow dress. Then that would have really put them in a complete box, right? If it was a rainbow dress, well, I'm supporting gay Americans. Well, wait a second, you're supposed to be wearing black. You're supposed to be supporting women. Well, but I'm supporting gay Americans. What? You have this clash of the two politically correct movements. It'd be hilarious. But, a pink or red, that would have been fun too. But we had 3 people who didn't wear them. We'll take a break. A lot more to get to. Later on, we're going to talk to Steve Moore, who has a great piece about dopes and imbeciles. You don't want to miss it. We've also posted that. Make sure that's posted, Taylor, on lauraingraham.com. I'll be tweeting from the game tonight, so you make sure to follow me on Twitter, Facebook. Jesse Waters will be in at the Ingram Angle. I'll be back in the saddle there tomorrow. But we have a great show on tap, and I'll be back in a few minutes on the immigration front. But Raymond Arroyo steps in. Do not touch that dial.
But I think in the toxic environment that you've created here in CNN and cable news, which is a real crisis of legitimacy for your network, and we saw it, of course, with the extremely fake news you reported about the Don Jr. and WikiLeaks story. There was a huge embarrassment for your network. Stephen. Just like the huge embarrassment you had when you got the Comey testimony wrong.
Stephen, I'm trying to get to the issue of the president's fitness, which a lot of people are questioning.
I'm getting to the issue of your fitness, but the president's tweets absolutely reaffirmed the plain-spoken truth.
Raymond Arroyo sitting in for Laura Ingraham. That was Stephen Miller, the speechwriter for the president, consultant to the president, on with Jake Tapper this weekend on CNN. Of course, the allegations coming out in this Wolff book, this Michael Wolff book, has been, causing, as you heard Miller say, a lot of hysterical reportage. He went on to rebuff some of that, and Jake Tapper threw him off the show.
You get 24 hours of negative anti-Trump, hysterical coverage on this network that led in recent weeks to some spectacularly embarrassing false reporting
I think the
from your
viewers
network.
Right now can ascertain who's being hysterical.
The viewers are entitled to have 3 months of the truth. Why don't you just give me 3 minutes to tell you the truth about Donald Trump that I know and then all of our campaign staff know?
Because it's my show and I don't want to do that. So here's my question.
No, but this isn't a courtroom and I have a right to speak.
Settle down.
Well, and then he basically told him to get off the set. Ugly, ugly, ugly. We are joined by Stephen Moore of the Heritage Foundation, who's written an incredible piece that I read this morning. And it talks about who are you calling a moron? In much of this reportage, and indeed in the entire Wolff book, the president is portrayed as a goofus who is kind of bungling around, a man who is infantile in his appetites, ignores advice, someone who basically you wouldn't trust to fill your car with gas, much less run the economy and be your highest law officer. Nonetheless, the evidence, the outcomes disprove the charge here. Stephen Moore joins us now. Stephen, thanks for being here.
Hi, Raymond. Happy New Year. Great to be with you.
Great to be with you. In the book, in the article, which should have been a book, maybe you should write a book, Stephen. Tell me what provoked this. I mean, surely it was hearing these reports, right, of what Wolff was saying.
Sure. Well, I start my piece called "Who Are You Calling a Moron?" by telling a story about when I was in about 4th or 5th grade, and I was in the junior tennis circuit, and I used to play a kid who I just despised. Raymond, I hated this kid, and but I played him about 3 or 4 times in matches, and I always felt like I was better than he was, but he kept beating me. And I remember one time after losing like 3rd or 4th match against him, I started pouting. I slammed my racket on the court and went up there, and Mom, I was practically sobbing, and I'm like, that guy stinks, how can I possibly lose a tennis match to him? He's horrible. And she grabbed me by my shoulders and she looked in my eyes and said, well, if he stinks, what does that mean about you? He beat you, didn't he? And I think about that a lot in the context of all these people who say what an idiot Donald Trump is. I mean, if he's a moron, what does that say about all the leftists who keep losing to him? He won an election that virtually every person on the left said he had zero chance of winning. He has rebuilt the American economy in a way that, you and I, Raymond, have known each other for a long time. You know me as an optimist. Even I didn't think we'd have Dow 25,000 at this point. And,
right.
Hundreds of companies already saying that they're going to give their workers either a pay raise or a bonus or added benefits. I mean, this is an amazing red-hot economy, and it has defied all of Donald Trump's critics, who basically said, Donald Trump is going to crash the economy. He's going to cause a Great Depression if he's elected president. Now, these are the people who are supposed to be mentally stable who are calling Donald Trump mentally unstable.
Mm-hmm. Sam, we're talking to Stephen Moore. Steve, compare what you're hearing here. Laura and I were talking about this last week, and the comparisons between Trump and Ronald Reagan, whom I can recall being treated the same way. You mentioned him in your article, too, for, he was charged with offering simplistic answers and watching Little House on the Prairie reruns with Nancy.
Now look, it wasn't nearly as bad for Reagan as it has been for Trump. But look, the left was completely contemptuous of Ronald Reagan. They used to laugh at the idea that he would run for president because, remember, Raymond, he was a grade B actor who knew nothing about running anything and so on. And one of my favorite, remember there was one time where the left, howled in laughter when he said something like, ketchup was a vegetable or something for the school lunch program. But, so they tried to portray Ronald Reagan as an imbecile. And, I just made the point, well, wait a minute. This is a guy who won 2 landslide elections, right, in 1980 and 1984. He won the Cold War. He rebuilt the American economy. He got rid of inflation. He reduced the unemployment rate. One of the most successful presidents of all time. What an imbecile, right?
Exactly. And we're seeing similar results from Trump, and the criticism seems aligned as well. Stephen Moore, thank you so much for the column. Who Are You Calling a Moron? Now, I found it over at CBN.com. Where else is it, Steve?
It's in the Washington Times, and people can go to Town Hall also and find it. And thanks for mentioning it. And, it sounds like a lot of Donald Trump's critics are the morons, not.
Hi, this is Ben Domenech, the host of the Federalist Radio Hour. We're a daily show coming to you 5 days a week from Washington, D.C., where we interview our nation's top journalists, politicians, authors, chefs, economists, entertainers, and more. If you're looking for a contrarian discussion on news, politics, or culture, give us a listen and subscribe at podcastone.com, the new Podcast One app, or at Apple Podcasts.
Hello, walls. Hot things go for you today.
We want the wall. The wall's going to happen or we're not going to have DACA. We want to get rid of chain migration. Very important. And we want to get rid of the lottery system. In addition to that, we want some money for funding. We need some additional border security. These are great people, and we need some border security. We need ICE. But we want to make sure that in terms of what we want, and we want DACA to happen, but we also want great security for our country.
Hello, Wendy.
You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. The president leaving Camp David after that big meeting this weekend with congressional leaders plotting out the year, their legislative priorities. How many of you find it a little bit odd, though, that the big priority for President Trump should be DACA? DACA? He didn't get elected to give amnesty to 800,000 illegal immigrants? I don't think so. But look, if that's what you have to do to get the wall built and to get rid of chain migration, which is the real reason we have such an explosion in foreigners in the United States who have no merit-based connection to the United States, who are tangentially related to people who are here legally. I guess I'm not thrilled about it, though, I have to tell you. Friends of mine in government will tell me, well, you have to remember that the chain migration is a massive problem. And if this is the only opportunity to stop chain migration, then that's what we're going to have to do. You know, I keep thinking in terms of the Republicans we should have in the Senate. Again, I keep thinking, wow, President Trump won on border enforcement, the wall, the need to get rid of all the bad people who are illegally here in the United States. He won by campaigning on those issues forthrightly. America first. It's not DACA first, it's America first. And so I keep thinking that, wow, these senators and congressmen, they must finally see it, right? They must finally get that Trump won because of his conservative populist agenda, not by catering to illegal immigrants. But then, of course, I'm reminded of what reality is. And what's reality? Reality is that in the U.S. Senate and the House of Representatives, there are maybe altogether a few dozen really solid conservative Republicans. Yeah, you just heard me say it. Maybe 2 or 3 dozen. Solid populist conservatives who will not put up with the guilt trip that the left wants to put on us on the issue of immigration. And so given that reality, you're not going to be able to stop chain migration or probably even something like the visa lottery unless you attach it to some either current amnesty plan or future amnesty plan. I personally am someone who believes that you should not reward people who are in violation of U.S. law, period. I mean, I've never been in favor of doing that. The only time that would make sense, in my view, and again, this isn't an ideal world where we had all these conservative populist Republicans in office, again, which we don't have. But in my ideal world, we would have the wall fully funded, all the immigration judges hired that we need. We would have rapid return at the border. So we find someone at the border, crossing the border, they're rapidly returned to Mexico. And Mexico doesn't want to enforce its border, that's fine, but those people aren't coming back to the United States. They're out, and that's permanent. You get caught sneaking into the country once, you're never coming back into the country again, even as a tourist. That's what I would say. So I would have more immigration judges. I would have the wall fully funded, not a down payment, which is absurd. We want it fully funded. We want to see a period of at least several years of concerted enforcement where chain migration is eliminated, completely eliminated. And where the visa lottery system is eliminated, where we have E-Verify at every work site. And from construction workers to hospitality workers, you hire illegal immigrants and you are subjected to massive fines. Yeah, I mean big fines that will really hurt. And what else would I do? Oh, I'd cut the number of green cards coming into the United States by half. We don't need to bring in more workers who are of low skills and who are illiterate in their own language and in our language. We don't need more of that. We have full up trouble right now. We don't need any more of that. You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. There was a great piece, by the way, by Byron York. Came out, I guess, this morning. While Washington obsesses over a new book on White House intrigue, the Trump administration is reaching a critical point on the issue of immigration. There are multiple moving parts. The DACA program, border wall, chain migration, visa lottery hanging over it all. Funding the government as well. Remember, the government runs out of money in a week or so. But everything hinges on DACA. That's ridiculous. Yeah, unilaterally imposed by Barack Obama. So this is the ghost of Barack Obama haunting the Trump administration right now, by the way. And don't you remember all those Republicans who said that Obama's DACA amnesty was totally unconstitutional? And so you would think when they said that they were kind of against it altogether, but no, they just wanted to be the ones to make the decision, I guess. So they were just upset that Obama did it as an executive action, which really his Article 1 powers don't give him the authority to do that. But the Republicans were all ticked off. They're like, well, the courts will decide, which they did in their favor. But now the Republicans, I guess, want to be the great saviors of the DACA, quote, kids, who are upwards of in their late 30s, by the way. They're not kids. When President Trump rescinded DACA last September 5th, he delayed implementation for 6 months to give Congress time to come up with some sort of solution for the so-called dreamers. That means lawmakers need to act by March 5th. So what's the rush at the end of January? Why, if you have till March 5th, why do it in the end of January? Nearly everyone on Capitol Hill wants a fix that results in legalization for dreamers. That's amazing. Democrats want to legalize right away, straight up, no strings attached. But Trump and most Republicans want a deal. Immigration reforms, the wall, chain migration, visa lottery, in exchange for legalization. That's where funding the government comes in. A temporary funding solution passed last month. Of course, that expires on January 19th, next Friday. Congress can pass a clean bill to avoid a partial shutdown, or it can have a fight if one party tries to attach unrelated policy preferences to the must-pass spending bill. So that is the traditional Republican role, by the way, which has led Republicans to believe that they always lose shutdown fights. But it's probably more accurate to say, according to Byron York, that Republicans don't always lose shutdown fights. It's the party that tries to attach unrelated policy preferences that end up losing shutdown fights. In the past, that has been Republicans. This time, it might be Democrats. See, I think that's a great point that Byron makes. Now, he's saying that if the Democrats try to hold up critical government functions to cater to illegal immigrants, I think you take that issue all the way to the bank, the electoral bank for Republicans. And Dick Durbin, Tricky Dick Durbin, he seems to want to set off this big crisis with the DACA attachment to the funding. And yeah, so he's saying with this demand for wall funding, he seems to be headed to the direction of shutdown to get his wall. So Durbin's saying that. But Trump, by the way, is now proposing trading his own policy preferences in exchange for DACA. So he said the wall is going to happen. You heard that soundbite when we were coming in. Durbin is suggesting that Democrats demand DACA passage to keep the government in business. Oh my gosh. That's just great, by the way. So they want our government and its functions to be held up to, again, legalize 800,000 people who never should have been here in the first place. And I have a question for all of you. How many of you think that the parents of these illegal immigrants are going to be deported from the United States if we pass DACA amnesty? Yeah, you agree with me. In other words, none of them will be deported. So in other words, we won't just have 800,000 people get amnesty. We'll have several 100,000 more receive amnesty who are either close relatives and illegally in the country or just straight up parents or, quote, sponsors. A lot of people don't realize that the people who ended up sponsoring the illegal, quote, dreamers, I hate that word, but the so-called dreamers, those who ended up sponsoring oftentimes were themselves illegal immigrants. Because, of course, ICE is not checking the addresses and whether there are valid Social Security numbers of these sponsors. ICE is not doing that. So this is the craziness and the crazy town that we've arrived at right now. This is so I say this is the ghost of Obama, once again haunting the Republican Party. 855-40-LAURA, your reaction to this and a lot more coming up. And remember, Jesse Waters is going to be hosting tonight on the Ingraham angle. I'm heading to the Alabama game. My flight was already delayed because of the freezing rain. I always have great luck on the weather. Freezing rain, ice, all that nonsense. But looking forward to the big game, Alabama and Georgia. Really happy Georgia's in. The Dogs haven't won since like 1980. And so it should be a great contest. We have a lot more to get to on your healthy radio addiction.
If you let me take your heart,
I will prove to you.
If I left out anything, it's probably stuff that was even more damning.
It's that bad.
It's that bad. I mean, it's an extraordinary moment in time, and the last several days focused on my book, I think, are proof of this. This is what happened here. What's going on here? This is, I think, not an exaggeration and not unreasonable. And it's not unreasonable to say this is 25th Amendment kind of stuff.
That's Michael Wolff, Raymond Arroyo sitting in for Laura Ingraham. This guy, I mean, you've been hearing about this book all weekend. The amazing thing is, he's now come forward and, I think, completely undermined whatever his intention was. To BBC Radio, he said the following. That was, I think, from NBC this weekend. He said, the Trump White House, the perception and the understanding that I create in the book, it will end this presidency. The story that I have told seems to present this presidency in such a way that it says he can't do the job. Well, you see, this is the problem with the reportage from the beginning. It's like a thesis student going out and trying to prove the thesis. So he fills in the blank by getting and deep diving into the minds of cabinet officials, completely unsubstantiated. I read an excerpt today where he talks about Jeff Sessions and his decision to recuse himself. And in Wolff's book, he kind of gets into Sessions' head, and he says, well, I don't want to deal with all these crazies that are going to come forward, and imagine how I'll be dragged into every other meeting, so I'm going to go recuse myself. Well, Wolff never spoke to Jeff Sessions. He never did an interview with him. So it is disingenuous to put thoughts and words in people's heads and lips and then to insert them in your book as if they're facts. They're not. It's conjecture at best. But for the moment, this is being used. Now, there's something interesting, and we're going to get into this in the next hour. There's something very interesting happening between fiction, fantasy, those who create stories, film, television, the rise of President Oprah that we're seeing. And I'm going to throw this question out to you. Are you ready for President Oprah? And I want to hear from people across the spectrum. Is Oprah the answer to what ails America today? And is she the only person that could beat Donald Trump? 855-405-2872. We're going to play a little excerpt of her Golden Globe speech and the latest reports coming out. This may be more than just media speculation. And anybody who knows Oprah, anybody who's watched the trajectory of this career, knows she does nothing by mistake. This is not an accident. And so it begs an interesting question. When I watched it last night, particularly that part about a new day, a new horizon coming, you thought, wow, something's afoot here. And I can't imagine that a lot of, well, I know it. I saw the emails from friends who were, this is what we need and this is the moment. Is Oprah the answer politically to what we need? Then I read this. In fact, if you go to my Twitter feed, to Raymond Arroyo, I've got this up. The Good Fight, which is the CBS show, it's now on CBS All Access, by the way. It's not even on TV. But the sophomore series, season of the show, includes a storyline about the Democratic Party courting several central law firm, the series central law firm, to get President Trump out of office. It's all about the impeachment of the president. And it just made me think about the Wolff book. Here's The Good Fight putting up this notion. And now, the rise of President Oprah. We'll get into all of this and much more in the next segment. Stay with us. Raymond Arroyo sitting in for Laura Ingraham.
Thanks for listening to the Laura Ingraham Show podcast. Download new episodes every week at podcastone.com. That's podcastone.com.
Podcast One has new shows on our new app. Check out all the cool features to help you explore our exciting new programming, like America's Lakers podcast with Jay Moore, So Random with Corinne Olympios, Attack Each Day, the Harbaugh's podcast, Not Just Sports with Susie Schuster and Rich Eisen, and Sessions with Randy Jackson, as well as your old favorites like The Lady Gang, Steve Austin, Shaquille O'Neal, and Adam Carolla. Get the new Podcast One app in the App Store, Google Play, or PodcastOne.com.